work for small to medium-sized companies. Our wholly owned and integrated office structure, in synergy with our international alliance network, gives us access to over 200 consultants and researchers worldwide, with an impressive depth and breadth of industry experience. From executive search to interim management, from recruitment process outsourcing to leader advisory, we offer a full suite of human capital solutions to our clients across the world. Before we get to our incredible speaker today, I want to share a few housekeeping notes. This call will be recorded. All participants have been muted and will remain muted throughout the presentation. At the end of the formal presentation, there will be a time for question and answers, so please submit your questions via the Q&A box, dialog box, and we will do our best to answer all your questions. Furthermore, we'll be sending out the recording and any handouts or resources mentioned in the follow-up email to everyone who has registered. So now it is my big pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Bilant Sadek. Hello, Bilant. Bilant is a regional commercial director for Middle East Africa and duty-free at Philip Morris International, and is based out of Lausanne, Switzerland, where PMI's headquarters are located. Bilant has more than 20 years of experience in marketing, sales, external affairs, and duty-free across Europe, Middle East, North Africa, Asia, and Middle East. And he has lived and worked in Switzerland, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Russia, United Kingdom, and the GCC. Bilant is also on the advisory board of BrandQuad, an e-commerce startup. Bilant holds an MBA from the London Business School and is currently writing his doctorate of business administration thesis titled Corporate Transformation Orchestration, Prescriptive Literature the non-digital native companies need throughout their transformation journey. And he's doing this at Bocconi School of Management in Italy. During this event, Bilant is not representing PMI, but sharing his views as an industry thought leader. So Bilant, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Eva. I hope you are all able to see my screen. Okay, so hello everyone. I know that time is a scarce commodity, so I appreciate the fact that you are dedicating 1 hour of your time for my talk. I will do my best to make it beneficial for you. The work I will share with you today is short extract of the thesis I have been preparing as part of my doctorate in business administration at Bocconi University with the supervision of Professor Andrea Dossi. The title of my thesis is Corporate Transformation Orchestration. So it's a prescriptive literature the non-digital native companies need throughout their transformation journey. So it's important to note that the scope is non-digital native company. Basically, I cover the classical companies. So let me inform you what I will cover today. I will start by describing disruptions happening around us and how companies are reacting to these disruptions. As a result of their reactions, companies either succeed or fail. And if they do fail, the failure will have an impact on the global economy. The reason I think today's talk is important for you is that I will share research-backed managerial tools that will help you as a leader to navigate your company's transformation towards success and ideally avoiding an economic loss on our societies. So no matter what your title is or the function you operate in, I think in 1 hour you will have a better understanding of transformations among non-digital native companies, and you will be better equipped to navigate them. So let's start with disruptions. There are 11 sources of disruption around us. These range from geopolitics to environment. The interesting part is technology is at the intersection of all these disruptions. Technologies have been merging at an exponential rate, and they are all around us, from IoT, Internet of Things, to augmented reality, to artificial intelligence, to traceability. These technologies are seeing the light because of what Moore's law described. Basically, the number of transistors in a dense integrated circle doubles about every 2 years. In their book, The Second Machine Age, Brian Olufsen and McAfee explain the progression of technology, giving a glimpse of the future and explaining the economics of these advances. Highly recommended read if you have time. The top right graph is demonstrating to us how technologies are merging, specifically cloud computing, big data, IoT, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. So all these technologies or technological advancement coupled with deregulation, changes in consumer behavior, and recently COVID led to accelerated disruptions. So the nice bell curve that we used to have earlier on technology adoptions has been much compressed. As a result, companies feel disruptions differently. In his book, Innovator's Dilemma, Christensen described how market leaders and incumbents fail to seize the next wave of innovation in their respective industries when smaller players come equipped with disruptive technologies. And actually, recently, the same concept is being extended to experience disruptors. So we said that disruption affects companies, and companies feel it differently, and they feel it at different speeds. And one factor that is the industry that they are in. On one end, we have industries with a slow speed of disruption, like the construction sector. And the other end, we have industries with a fast pace of disruption, like technology, media, and telco. As a result, companies will need to calibrate their response to these disruptions. Some of them take small steps by making low-risk moves, and others take bolder steps. Specifically, some of them will reinvent themselves periodically to ride the wave of their industry's S-curve. And other companies simply will fail. And here I have 3 quotes for you, but I will read the first one by the CEO of Blockbuster back in 2008. He said, "Neither Redbox nor Netflix are even on the radar screen in terms of competition." As you may also know, Netflix was willing to be bought by Blockbuster at a certain point of time. Blockbuster is long gone, and Netflix was valued at $241 billion yesterday. So we talked about those companies, but also we need to say that some companies transform. And here I would like to take a minute to explain what is meant by a transformation. Transformation is a set of organization-wide programs aimed at enhancing the organizational health of a company. These changes lead to a fundamental change in the organization's logic, involving a kind of metamorphosis from one state to another. However, researchers indicate that most companies fail to survive. The same observation came from consultants, and here you have McKinsey on the top left, and then you have BCG on the top right, and you have Bain at the bottom. So McKinsey are advocating that only 26% of companies succeed, whereas BCG are advocating for 27%, and Bain are more pessimistic at 12%. So as a result of these failures, the global economy loses trillions of dollars. And actually, this brings me to the question that triggered my interest. Why success varies among non-digital native companies through their transformation journeys, potentially costing the global economy trillions of dollars. And in search of an answer, I went through a literature review. A literature review is basically when you go and read and analyze most of what has been written about the topic in academia as well as in the practitioner world. On top, I conducted a case study research of 20 transforming companies. What was the methodology? The first thing I have done is I went to Factiva and I have done a search for the term transformation in quarterly earnings transcripts of non-digital native companies for the years 2015 up to 2019, with a minimum 2 consecutive years of mentioning the word transformation. And I was able to put a list of 90 companies. The next step was to contacting these leaders in those companies. And actually, I realized that I sent more than 1,000 emails because it was COVID and it was very difficult to convince them to be part of this journey, especially with confidentiality concerns. The third step was, from all of these emails, I was able to narrow down the 20 companies that I concentrate on. And those companies are Philip Morris, it's a tobacco company, and the company that I work for, Enel, which is an energy company, Europcar Mobility Group, Invacare is in the medical field, Signet Jewelries, they are in the jewelry business, Wells Fargo is a financial institution, PPG is an industrial group, Orbia is an industrial group, Tapestry is a group that owns luxury handbags like Michael Kors. Orange is telecom. MetLife is insurance. Pernod Ricard is alcohol. Assurant is insurance. Alcoa is aluminum and mining. Teleperformance and Alorica, these are companies that are providing business services. Campari is alcohol. Hershey is FMCG. Carrefour is Carrefour. And Coty is cosmetics and perfume. And the next step was for me to interview, to have 34 in-depth interviews, and I started in June 2020. In parallel, I went through around 264 references related to these companies, and these ranged from press releases, yearly reports, also earnings transcript, as well as investor day presentations. So those companies, 2/3 of them are based in the US, 1/3 are based in the EU. And to give you an idea about who was interviewed, you see in the graph in front of you, 20% of those interviews are either COO, Chief Procurement Officer, CFO, Chief Innovation Officer, or a General Counsel. 26% are either SVP or VP of Finance or Operation. In gray, 21% SVP or VP Commercial Marketing, 21% Chief Technology Officer, SVP or VP of Digital or Digital Transformation, and 12% were Chief HR Officer, VP or HR. So what we know about their transformation. So we're talking about 20 companies, and one of them started back in 2008, and the rest you can see when did they start. The majority started in 2018 and 2019. Now, the graph on the bottom left, I'm separating them, like 50% are Mesa transformation and around 50% are Meta transformation. I will come back to you on this one, but it's good for you to remember that it's almost a half-half between Mesa and Meta transformation. The interesting part is the bigger graph in front of you. And this is the graph that depicts the success of the transformation in those 20 companies. So the bar in blue shows us the stock compounded annual growth rate since the start of the company transformation. And the bar in gray is the benchmark index, again, CAGR, since the start of transformation of the industry where that company is operating. And the blue dot is basically the delta or the difference. And as you will notice, the majority of the numbers are highlighted in red because actually the majority of these companies were not performing better than the sector that they are operating in. So it's only 5 companies that you can see on the top that really had a successful transformation. And if you remember what I shared with you on the McKinsey and BCG numbers, these are very similar because we're talking about 5 out of 20. Now, my findings, what is the key finding that I have? What my finding is corporates who orchestrate the 3 components of a transformation, which is business model transformation, organizational transformation, and digital enabled transformation, are more successful in their transformation journey compared to companies who don't. What does this mean? In order for me to explain it to you, I need to go more in details about what do I mean about the 3 components. So let's dive deeper. This is the first framework I would like to share with you. As I've told you in the beginning of the presentation, I'll be sharing with you certain frameworks. So when I started analyzing companies, I was missing a framework that helps me analyze corporate transformation. So I produced this simple framework in front of you, and it will be the first tool to share with you among many others I mentioned in the beginning of the talk. To analyze a corporate transformation, it's important to start by understanding the specific factors behind their transformation. So there are certain external factors and there are internal factors. The external factors are similar to what I described to you earlier: technology, regulator, etc. And the internal factors might be activist shareholders or even a new CEO coming with a transformation on her agenda. Then you need to zoom in 3 components. First is the business model transformation. And what I mean by business model transformation is a systematic, strategic change process of switching from one business model to another in order to gain or regain competitive edge. A very easy example of this one is, think about Netflix, a company that started with DVDs and now they moved completely their business model into streaming. The second bucket is the digital enabled transformation. And I don't like it when we call digital transformation. There is nothing called digital transformation. It is digital enabled transformation. And what I mean with that is digital technology integration into all areas of a business, changing how corporates operate and deliver value to customers. And the last bucket, and this is the interesting part, the first companies that transformed a long time ago, they realized that bringing money and budget to put into digital is not enough. What they realize is important is the organizational transformation, the people who are behind those companies. So organizational transformation is a radical changes in our organization's mission, structure, systems, and culture. So these are the 3 components that I mentioned earlier. Now, going forward, corporate transformation can take 2 forms, and I'm trying to explain it to you with this framework in front of you. So at the X, to explain more, here's another tool for you. So the X-axis refers to changes in digital and organization, and the Y-axis refers to the business model change. So companies usually start at the bottom left with no changes on their components. If a company moves up by just changing its business model without enabling its digital and adapting the organization, the company will end with what I call a mistransformation. Now, concerning the companies who move laterally and change their organization and enable their current business model with digital without having a drastic change on their business model, they go through what I'm calling a MESA transformation. And this is what I hint earlier, that 50% of the companies where MESA transformation means that they change their digital and organization without changing their business model. And then on the top right, these are the companies who do the change on the three components. They change their business model, they bring digital, and they change their organization. So I will go a little bit into details on these three components because it's important for you to understand what are these three components, because it leads back to my findings that these three components are one ecosystem. So first is the business model transformation component. Indeed, there is no one size fits all, and what is needed really is to identify the right business model that works best for the company. And here, for what I'm trying to say, so how companies do change their business model is here. I'm referring to the work of Professor Govindarayan that he published in his book, The Three Box Solution. Basically, what he's advocating, that companies have to balance the three boxes, being the present, where companies optimize their current business using Six Sigma or Kaizen, etc. The second box being the past, where companies must let go of their practices that fuel the current business but fail the new one. And the last box, where companies invent a new business model. The consulting firm Bain came with something similar, saying that companies toggle between their core business, which is today's engine, and the new business, which is tomorrow's engine. So in front of you are three companies that did exactly that. First is IBM, by completely divesting its hardware business and moving to services and software. Second is Netflix, and I mentioned it earlier. They started with DVDs and now completely moved to streaming. And last is Marvel's example. So the best way to come up with a new business model is by envisioning the business both today forward and future back. As a result, companies manage to drastically change one or more element of their operating model. And the four potential elements are: first, a drastic change in the products and services portfolio. Second element could be a drastic change in ways of engaging with customers. Third element is a new economic model. And here I would like to quote a company called John Deere, which is an agriculture company. And now if you go to this company's details, you realize that much of their income now is coming through SaaS, or software as a service. Imagine they used to produce tractors. They still do tractors, but they changed their business model by having a chunk of their revenues coming from software services or through the application that they develop. And the fourth element is a drastic change in the operations. And here the example on the graph of a cross-functional operations transformation that covers procurement, manufacturing, supply chain, and other facets of the operating model. So I explained to you the first component, which is the business model transformation. Here I will move into the digital one. So now going to the second component, which is digital enabled transformation. The framework in front of you is from Microsoft. Digital transformations can have four aims. One, optimizing the operation by making it agile and efficient. Two, making products more valuable by adding technological features. And three, empowering employees by equipping them with digital solutions. And four, engaging customers by leveraging data. So all of this happens with data and potentially artificial intelligence as enablers. But also we need to remember that a digital enabled transformation are at the heart of two ecosystems, the data ecosystem as well as the digital ecosystem. And to have a proper deployment of a digital enabled transformation, you will have to have the right maturity within the organization, as demonstrated by this framework that has been developed by Westerman and McAfee. So, and this is where they're talking about digiratis. These are the companies that understand digital and they optimize their business through digital. So here I go to the third component, which is the organization transformation, which is basically an adaptational mechanism that really takes a lot of time and efforts. And what happens in an organization transformation? The key element there is capabilities, as McKinsey are showing on the top left chart. So below that chart, we have the process suggested by BCG. So what happens usually in practice, once the company decide to transform, they identify the capabilities needed for their new business model. Then they assess their current employees, and then they start recruiting external talents as well as upskilling or reskilling their current employee base, and then instill organizational learning. And as you can see on the table on the right, organizational learning is not only about lectures in classroom, it's much more beyond that. It includes coaching as well as web-based activities. So we talked about capabilities, learning, but also to have the proper organizational transformation, companies change the way their employees work. So this includes experimentation, sandboxes, piloting, measuring, scaling, all of these to happen with the aim of reaching a stage that employees are in an always on process of continuous improvement. And this is what you are seeing in the graph at the bottom from Bain. What else related to the organizational transformation is redesigning the organizational structure. So basically, Accenture introduced the concept of zero-based organization, or ZBO, whereby companies start from a white page. Most successful companies are moving towards organisms based on projects and cross-functional squads and tribes. So as a result, when you do all these changes on the organization, which will not happen immediately, this will affect the DNA of the organization and its culture. And as you can see from the top left chart, the most significant challenge is culture and behavioral challenges. So the aim, as highlighted in both graphs on the right, is to move towards a culture that welcomes agility, experimentation, self-organization, data-driven decisions, customer centricity, digital-first mindset, and collaboration. So having explained to you all the three components, the question that came to my mind, and it's an important one for you to understand, is, are these three components unidimensional or interdependent? And for that, I went again into the academic literature, and I was really able to identify scientifically that they are interdependent. And also after cross-checking and cross-examining with the academic literature about transformation failures, also it was clear that these three components are interdependent, as you can see in front of you. So the first part, the business model, what I added on top is the managing risk and funding and investment, because these are two enablers for the business model transformation. The digital part, I also added the enablers for the digital enabled transformation, which is system integration, analytics, and technology. And the enablers for the organizational transformation are communication, trust, and empowerment. But the fundamental thing that I kindly ask you to remember is the interdependencies. So what does it mean? Any change you make on one of the interdependencies that I highlighted in the boxes will have an effect on any of the others. Let's take an example. If you change the data ecosystem, you will effectively change the ways of working, which will effectively change the business model. Another example, you cannot change the digital ecosystem if you don't change the capabilities, and therefore cannot change your business model. So all these points, business model adaptation, data ecosystem, digital ecosystem, capabilities and learnings, ways of working towards a continuous improvement, and structure, all of these are interdependent. So now that I have covered the three components and their interdependency, it's time to go back to my key finding. And the key finding is corporates who orchestrate these three components of a transformation are more successful in their transformation journey compared to companies who don't. But what does it mean? So for a successful transformation, I have three tips for you. The first one, manage the three components as one ecosystem. And here is a framework for you that you can use when planning your transformation. So this plan has 5 parts. The first part is the vision, purpose, core values, why the company is transforming, and the strategic priorities for that company. The second section is about you provide details about your business model transformation, and there you talk about the new business model and how you will transition from the old business model to the new one. Also, you need to talk about value creation, and also you need to talk about how you will fund and invest into this transformation and what are the risks that you need to manage. And at the bottom, you see the business model transformation KPIs related to that part. The third part is the organizational transformation plan, and there you need to write and prepare and put the plan for how you will build the capabilities, how you will build the learning inside the company, how you will instill new ways of working towards a continuous improvement, how you will change the structure of your company, how you will continuously communicate internally and externally about your transformation, and how you will drive trust and empowerment within the company. And of course, you will have to have KPIs for that. The fourth part is the digital transformation plan, where you need to address your digital strategy plan, the data ecosystem plan, the digital ecosystem plan, and the system integration plan with all the APIs that goes there. And there you also have your KPIs for that section. And the last section, section E, is about how can I make sure to govern, to have a sustenance process. And there you have a governance process, change management process, compensation process. And here I need just to draw your attention to those 3 buckets of KPIs. These 3 buckets of KPIs will go to something I'm calling corporate transformation dashboard. So you as a leader, you will have the KPIs there to allow you follow up the transition of your transformation. So far, the first tip that I'm giving you is all of this is one ecosystem and they are all important. You need to plan them ahead of time. The second tip I have for you is manage the ecosystem in an orchestrated multi-steps approach. So what I shared with you earlier are all the things that you need to do, but I didn't talk about the sequencing because there should be a kind of orchestration. And here I show you the orchestration, or what I'm calling corporate transformation orchestration map, to manage the ecosystem in an orchestrated multi-steps approach. So what you have in blue is the business model, in gray is the organizational transformation, and purple you have the digital transformation, and at the bottom you have the transformation sustenance process. So starting with phase 1, when you will start moving your business model, very important to start with capabilities, learning, ways of working towards a continuous improvement. There, in that phase, you start building your capabilities, you accelerate the onboarding of the people that you are recruiting inside your company, you build the organization learning, so you ensure that knowledge is transferred properly within the company. You foster agile ways of working, collaboration and scaling. You instill trust and empowerment within the organization, and you start changing the mindset of your employees towards a continuous improvement. So that's the first phase. Very, very important to start with that. The second phase is when you will look at your data ecosystem. And what do I mean by that is you need to understand where do you will source your data, how your data will be architectured, what are the analytics that you will do, and what's the process design. Once you have that picture, you can move into the third phase, which is the digital ecosystem. And this is where you will bring the systems and technologies, you will structure your digital, and you will do the business integration, APIs, and automation in the various legacy systems that you have. The fourth section or the fourth phase is the structure, and this is where you redesign your organizational structure and workspace. Throughout this process, there is the sustenance process that covers government processes, reviews, feedback loops, gates, dashboards, budgets, CTO, which is Corporate Transformation Office or Business Transformation Office, PMO, Project Management Office, Process Excellence and Sustainability. All of these are under governance process and they go throughout your transformation. And then change management process, very, very, very important. And it is a throughout the journey process. Communicating constantly, embracing diversity and inclusion, addressing insecurities, behaviors, and biases. People are irrational, people don't want to change, and build commitment at all levels. The last part is the compensation, monetary versus non-monetary. Very important to link the KPIs with the compensation process. And as you see on the right, I'm talking about all in. This is not a department by department thing. We are all in it together. So that's the second big ticket item for you, which is, so I talked in the beginning about managing the components as one ecosystem. Here I'm talking about the phasing. And the last part is using a management system for an always on corporate transformations. You will realize if you start a transformation, it never ends. You will always continue on that path. So what I'm proposing here in front of you is a kind of what I'm calling a closed loop management system for an always on transformation. And it looks complicated, but it is not. The whole thing starts in the beginning by developing your vision and purpose, core values, and goals. Once you do that, you go into the second step, which is formulating your strategic priorities and the enablers, depending on the external and internal factors your company is in. And then we have business model transformation, digital transformation, organizational transformation. These relate to the what I shared with you on the first step, which basically all the buckets that I ask you to prepare ahead of the transformation. So all of these buckets includes initiatives and projects. So what I'm advocating that all these projects, because there are too many and people will be really all over the place, you need to organize them. So what I'm advocating that these initiatives are sent to a PMOO or Project Management Orchestration Office. And the team, their job would be to prioritize those projects according to the strategic and orchestration fit that I shared with you on this two slides before. And also that team will look into the investment and the return on investment. Once those projects go into execution, the result starts being populated in the dashboard that I hinted to you earlier, where you have all the KPIs related to these three transformations. And then from there, the performance measures go to monitor and learn, test and adapt, where you have your strategy reviews, your operation reviews, your profitability analysis and strategy correlations, and this will allow you to stay in a always on transformation. So I'm almost at the end of the presentation. So as a summary, for a successful corporate transformation, there are three important things for a successful result or optimization of your transformation. One, manage the three components, and I hope by now you remember these three components. It's the business model, the digital enabled, and the organization. So managing these three as one ecosystem. You cannot manage one and forget the other. It's one ecosystem. The second one is managing the ecosystem in an orchestrated multi-steps approach. And the third one is use a management system for an always-on corporate transformation. That's it from my side. At the end, I would like to thank really you, the audience, for giving me 1 hour of your time. I would like also to thank Spengler Fox for giving me the opportunity. Also, many thanks goes to Bocconi professors and colleagues. And last, to the leaders who allowed me to interview them. And now, with the limited time we have, I'm ready to take any question coming from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Bülent. It was a very passionate and enthusiastic presentation, so definitely very interesting and worthwhile listening to you. My question would be, when is your thesis available? Will you issue a book? Will it be for sale? How can we access?
Thank you very much, Eva, for the question. Actually, because of COVID, the schedule for the thesis defense has changed. I was supposed to stand the defense this summer, but now it has moved to December or January, depending when I will submit the thesis. And yes, this is something that I have in mind together with my family and the professor that I'm working with, that probably we have a great opportunity to come up with a book that really can help companies to maximize the efforts and the huge budgets that are put behind transformation. And I hope that the book will add value to them and help them navigate, because it's a very big topic, and it's very difficult to push it only in 1 hour. So I think I have enough content to put together a book that hopefully will find some good reception.
Okay, sounds like a good plan. So we only have 13 minutes left. So I see we already have 11 questions. So I would like to start with the first one from Gaëlle de Talouet. So she says, thank you very much for the presentation. Have you been able to relate transformation success to who is leading the transformation? CEO, marketing, IT, corporate team, business units?
Okay. So there is something that I didn't mention in the beginning. I just mentioned that the scope of the thesis that I'm working on is non-digital native. There is another thing that I'm writing in the thesis that I'm not covering, which is the leadership style. It's not what you are mentioning in your question, but I wanted to highlight this one because there is enough research outside that says that sometimes the CEO style in running the show affects the results of the company. So going back to your question, actually, this is where a change in mindset is needed. companies that are transforming, they need to realize that there is no one function that is more superior to the other or one function that is driving the transformation. Actually, what happens usually, you have either the CEO appointing a chief transformation officer that orchestrates that transformation, or he or she puts a small team from the executive committee to manage the transformation. But what we always see from, evidence is very soon, once the work starts, the responsibility goes back to the business unit and all the functions. And this is why I was mentioning that it's very important to remember that the success of a transformation is an all-in approach. There is no one function more important than the other. It is it's an ecosystem, and you need really to manage it all together. I hope I was able to answer the question.
Thank you. Then we have a question from Nadim Aboud. Bilan, do you believe that companies have to undertake the transformation of the three main components simultaneously, or they can do it gradually? And in this case, what would be the order of importance among the three components?
Yeah, so what I'm advocating is that companies, to succeed in the future, they, as you have seen in the beginning of the presentation, it's very important to understand whether the current business model that you are operating in, whether if it will be valid in the future. And here, the case of Christensen, who scientifically showed that companies, big players, they are doing a lot, doing good business, and then suddenly you have these small players that are coming with disruptive technology, and they start taking the share of market of them, and then at a certain tipping point, the whole thing goes imbalanced. So what I'm trying to say that I think companies who will survive in the future, they will have also to consider changing their business model. But as you have seen, 50% of the companies that are transforming, 50 or even more, they are only doing a transformation in digital and organization. They are not doing a change in their business model. So one of the alcohol companies I interviewed, there is no change in their business model, yet they are transforming by bringing digital and changing their organization. So it depends case by case, but eventually I think every company will have to revisit their business model to ensure that they can succeed to any disruption coming. Now, on the sequencing, as I've mentioned to you, we have these three components, and these three components have to be managed as one ecosystem. And from a sequencing perspective, the most important thing is the human part. So as I've showed you earlier, it's all about building the right capabilities, the right learning, the right mindset, the right ways of working before you talk about data, before you talk about digital. Because if you don't have the right capability in the market and the company and the mentality, data will not be used, digital will not be used. That's why most of the actually, when I started my interviews with leaders, I didn't have that as phase one. But more I talked to people, I realized that the most important is really the human factor. It's the first part. That's why I prioritize it. Thank you, Nadine, for the question.
Thank you. Then we have a question from Geronimo. He is asking about corporate transformation plan. So it seems very complex to get all of these definitions before you start transformation itself. Is it real that the companies you investigated had a full corporate plan defined ahead of transforming?
Very nice question. And the answer is no. And that was really one of the surprises that I realized. So what I realized that companies, unfortunately, they don't move unless they get hit. I mean, there is a good analogy with when you put a frog in a pan and then you start boiling the water, the frog stays inside and it dies after the water gets boiling. The frog does not feel the disruption coming to it. But companies, when they feel the hit, this is when they react. And unfortunately, what I realized that they react like headless chickens. They go everywhere. They start investing right, left, and center. And actually, what you realize that they don't take their employees and the investor. It's very important, and this is what I mentioned on managing the risk, on communicating, because there are many stakeholders in any transformation. Yes, the employees, but the suppliers, the governments, the street, the financial street is very, very important, as well as your board. So that's why I'm advocating the plan that you have seen. And from to give you a rough percentage, I would say scientifically that not more than 25% of those companies had a plan when they went into their transformation. And this is a fundamental flaw. And that's why I'm advocating, yes, you need to have a plan before you jump in. You need to put all the details and you need to do it in a very orchestrated way. Yes, you might tell me that reality sometimes is different. Nevertheless, I re-emphasize that any company transforming has to have the plan and they have to have a certain scientific approach on how to do it. Otherwise, they will be either under-investing or over-investing or even losing their bullets and or losing the stakeholders on the way. Thank you for the question.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Next question comes from Sami. What is, in your view, the impact of the always on transformation strategy on the company overall culture and staff engagement, satisfaction, and emotional stability?
Very good. So that's why I was stressing that the most important you start with is the human factor. And this is the part that will stay up to the first few years of your transformation. And what I was trying to say there, that you need to instill this mentality of being agile, of being consumer oriented, and also of being I mean, you need to have a mindset towards a continuous improvement. If you are able to move your organization towards this mindset, then they will not feel bad or they will not be exhausted, because this would be the way they operate. For them, it's business as usual. And actually, companies who transform, they don't do it for 1 year and then they stop. Once you instill this culture and this mindset in the company, and these, I'm talking about successful companies, they will be able to be an always on. And actually, this is what you want. You need to have an agile organization that can maneuver whatever economic situation that they are in. They need to be resilient. And this is what we have seen in COVID. The companies that had internal resilience, be it in mindset or supply chain or closeness to their customers, they were able to weather the COVID. And actually, they took advantage of COVID to make sure that once COVID is over, they will go outside stronger than when the COVID started. So very important, instilling the right culture. Only at that time, the transformation will become like breathing air, and the whole organization will rally towards your vision and purpose. Thank you for the questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Then we have Raid, who says, thanks, Bilan, for this highly informative, data-driven and research-based question. Asking, so disruption is the new world order and evolving continuously. Does this mean that corporates need to keep transforming in the same pace as disruption?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what is interesting, again, if you remember in the beginning of the presentation, I was informing you that also it depends on the industry. If you are in construction, that the level of change, there is change, Probably currently you can use virtual reality, you can use artificial intelligence and sustainability to enhance and be more efficient. But at the end of the day, the industry does not dictate a lot of changes. But if you are working in Google on those, and I'm not covering those because they are too fast, and actually when you see how they work, those guys are on steroid. It's really different from classical companies. So what I'm trying to say, the industry that you are in also will dictate how much transformation or always on transformation. But conceptually, every company to succeed, as you rightly said, the disruptions that are hitting us right, left, and the center, and actually it's like a race because technology is ahead of you. Software, applications, platforms are evolving so fast that companies are finding it very difficult to catch up with this. And that's why you need to have the right mentality, the right people, the right capabilities, and also the right investment in digital to be able to catch up with whatever happening around you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Alexandro is saying, excellent articulation view of transformation, impressive, Wieland. So his question is, how do you manage pressure for short-term results with the long-term transformation goals?
Very, very good question. I mean, so scientifically, in order to assess a transformation is successful or not, you go back to the financial result, and this is what I shared with you. I mean, total shareholder return could be one, or the stock movement versus the industry the company is operating in. This is the scientific way. But there is a lot of research that I did not mention here that caution this approach, because when companies are transforming, there are a lot of things that are happening, especially in the first year when you are cost cutting, removing people, bringing new people. Usually your numbers will go down. The other thing is that, as you know, a stock price is a combination of what is happening in the company, but also there are certain external factors. So what I'm trying to tell you is, yes, you can look at successful transformation only from the visibility of finance, but also success is beyond that. You need first to have few years down the road to make sure that the company has institutionalized all this changes, these processes, the thinking, the culture into the way of working. And only at that time you can say that really those guys managed a corporate transformation. So, and also this is what I mentioned on communicating. I mean, there is the case of Pepsi with under the CEO at that time, Moody, where she, I mean, she has done a tremendous job first to bring the board on her side when she started to bring healthier snacks into the company. And she said, I would like to change my portfolio. But it didn't stop there. She had also to talk to the investors. And that's why communication internally to your employees, to the street, for the investors to know what is your vision, where are you taking your company. And actually, the investors that are with you, they will understand if you explain it well. They will stay with you throughout the course of your transformation, and they understand that maybe in the beginning you will have a little bit of dip down, but they understand you are doing something for the long term, and if they are really true investors, they will stay with you all the way. Thank you for the question.
Okay, then a question from Frank. He wants to know, as a guideline, what is the minimum time horizon to contemplate for such comprehensive transformation?
Very good question. Very difficult to say. It depends on the industry. It depends on the situation. However, transformations are not a cycle that can happen in 1 year. As I've showed you, one of the companies that I investigated started in 2008, and they are still transforming. So what I'm trying to say, probably a good time span, depending on your industry, and here I'm not talking about digital native companies, you need to take 3 years into consideration to have a real move in the needle. Otherwise, it's it's very difficult to judge. But again, the other thing that also you need to realize, that a good company, a successful one that starts on a transformation, they will always be on a transformation. So there is no real end to the transformation that they do. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, depending on the industry, you need to look at minimum 3 years to see a certain impact moving on. Thank you for the question.
Yes, 3 more questions. The next one is from Joe. Any research on risk versus benefit to carry out a digital transformation?
Actually, I mean, for sure. I mean, the question also is not only applicable for digital, but also applicable for changing your business model. A company like Philip Morris, sorry, I'm not advocating our company, I'm just giving an example. So we are a company, we are known in selling cigarettes, but now we are moving our portfolio and our vision to continue to completely move out of the combustible business, out of cigarettes. This is a very, very, very risky statement. And this is really, it requires a good vision and a good management to be able to manage the risk. So managing the risk is part of the transformation, specifically if you are changing your business model, the portfolio. So you need to communicate a lot, as I said earlier. Now, going to your question on digital, digital is not for the sake of digital. Investing in digital is not for the sake of, it is what you want to do out of digital. So that's why in the beginning I mentioned that you need to first look at your data ecosystem to understand from where are you sourcing your data, how you architecture those data, and what you will do with this data. Only at that time you can bring technology and system. And once you do that, you will be facing a fundamental question, which is the legacy systems that you already have. And many companies struggle with that, because moving from SAP X to SAP more is a very expensive exercise. So they do a sensitivity analysis, and accordingly they decide how they want to move on the digital front, because there are certain ways. Instead of investing in a new ERP system, you look at the legacy system, and through APIs you try to integrate them. Also, you need to understand what are the CRM or the digital tools, or even the technology that you are using in manufacturing. So to answer you specifically, you need to understand where the business is going, where the business model is going, how you will reach success, and then accordingly you identify what you need from what you will be doing from a digital perspective, and then you will have the cost benefit equation, how much it will cost me and how much I will get out of it. And only at that time you will assess the risk of movement. But risk also is a big word, because I talked on the financial side, but also there are other risk factors that are specifically related to technology when it comes to AI, whether the company is using it in the right way, and also cybersecurity, which also is a big risk topic these days. But if you want more details, please feel free to get in touch. I'll be more than happy to answer any question in this session or even later on.
Mm-hmm. Next question is from Michael. So when you did your research, did you have a chance to come across concrete examples of companies going through transformation, either successful or failed ones? Yeah,
so the 20 companies that I shared with you, the graph where I plotted these 20 companies on a success rate just based on the financial results. And the numbers that I shared with you, 5 out of the 20 are considered successful because they were able to have financial results that exceed the sector or the industry that they operate in. So yes, but also like McKinsey and BCG I showed you at the beginning, it is true, 20 to 25% is the percentage of successful companies. 75% of companies who say that they are transforming will definitely hit the wall because they are not really orchestrating these three components that I mentioned to you. Thank you for the question.
And another question from Michael. So what are the key lessons learned?
I mean, three key lessons that I mentioned that I would like to repeat. The first one, you need to manage these three components as one ecosystem. You cannot invest only in digital and forget your people. The whole thing is interconnected, and it is as important. The second point I would like to make is that there are a certain sequence to events. And this is why I'm advocating you need to start with the most important element, which is the people behind your organization, because they are the ones who will drive the success or they will take you backwards. So that's why I had a kind of sequencing for you, starting with capabilities, learning, ways of working towards a continuous improvement. And then the second one I mentioned, the second sequence is you look into the data, and then third sequence, you bring digital and technology. The fourth sequence is when you restructure your company to make things work perfectly. And by that time, your business revenues are moving from engine 1 to engine 2, the new business model. And the third part that I mentioned is transformations are very difficult. You need to have a kind of a loop, a management system that can follow up all these things, because a lot of initiatives will happen. Emotions are all over the place. So there are a lot of things that need to happen at the same time. And that was the third one, which is this management system that takes into consideration the components that I mentioned to you, and the sustenance process, the governance, the compensation, and the change management. So these are the three big learnings. If you go out with something through this presentation, is these three parts. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Then we have a final question from Vlad. So it's about, so he understands that usually the transformation happens top down, and it requires a serious commitment from the leadership team. So, but are you thinking it's possible that such a transformation can be driven bottom up? And if yes, what's in your opinion the best way to get the support from the management?
Very, very interesting part. Very interesting question. So this is where I didn't analyze the style of the CEO, because in one of the companies that I went in deep, you had a very, I don't want to say a dictative CEO, but that person was like a machine. Everything was like driven by him. And actually, the whole, you can see clearly that the whole thing is top to bottom. But the clever part that he was able to do is he realized it's not only him and his management team. He understood that in order to reach success, he will have to go as deep as possible. So what I like about the approach, and actually to better articulate myself, if you are a CEO, you need to drive the vision. No one will come up with the vision. But put the vision and then retreat yourself and let the people be empowered, feel the trust, and let them help you go through towards that vision. If you go into all the details and you are too authoritative, it will not work. So to answer you, I truly believe there should be a kind in the beginning on the vision, on the purpose, because this would require somebody of a senior authority, somebody who has the right paycheck to do this big decision. But after that, the whole thing should trickle down, and there should be an up, top, bottom to up. You cannot outsource the decision of your vision and purpose to the teams on the ground. So that's the tricky part. So to cut it short, in the beginning, the vision has to be set by the senior team. You can involve some of the people, the talents in your company to be part of this decision, but the vision and the purpose has, I mean, especially the vision has to come from the senior guys, and then you need to open it up. You need to have a good loop happening from bottom up, top down. The whole thing should be, again, highly coordinated, so everyone is going towards the same direction. But in the beginning, yes, I would advocate to have a strong input from the top management. Thank you for the question.
There's one additional last question. It's about, I think you partially answered it already. The comment is, companies must be fast to settle their transformation. So what is the time framework you think that companies must be able to settle the plan?
I mean, it's a very difficult question to answer because it's a lot of things are happening at the same time. If no matter how the situation is bad, if the leaders of the company were able to set the tone, communicate what they are doing clearly to the investors, and on every quarterly report, you go back to the investor and show that you are really still on the path that you explained in the beginning, and you show numbers for that, they will go with you because they know they will cash it out at a later stage. But if your things are dragging, and by dragging I mean more than 3-4 years, the street will not wait. They will not take you serious because you need to show some wins, not only for the street but also for your people. Yes, I'm advocating that you change the culture to make sure that people are able to navigate transformations, but at the same time, you need every quarter to give them a success story. And I like, I mean, one of the CEOs of one of the companies, he clearly mentioned to his management team, every quarter I would like to have a success story. He is into storytelling, and every quarter he had something to say, and that kept the people energized. And you need to do the same, I think, for the street, for them to understand your vision and continue with you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much, Bilal. So we well exceeded by almost 20 minutes, but I think it was really worth listening, and we could stay on endlessly. Thank you again so much for having you here today, and thank you for all the participants who joined us today. We hope you enjoyed it, the conversation and also the topic. And there will be a link of the recording issued, and it will be sent to you via email for those who have registered. And we will also have it on our YouTube channel. So please, if you want, you can follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe also to our YouTube channel, so you can then stay up to date.